I wanted to discuss how to approach the planche for beginners. So it's a simple move. First of all, if you're a complete beginner, don't do the planche. You need to build up some basic strength first. So make sure you can hold the push-up position. You understand what to do with your shoulders. You understand what to do with your midsection. You're not like this. You're not behind yourself. You know how to put the weight on top of your hands. Your wrists and your elbows are prepared. Make sure you can do that first. But this is kind of the next step towards approaching the planche. Planche is really simple. Like literally all you have to do is lean forward, and if you lean forward far enough, your legs are going to lift. It's just that it's going to take a long time to get the strength to lean forward. Oh, if you don't know what a planche is, it's basically a horizontal handstand. So you're basically holding a push-up position with your feet off the ground, which means that in order to counterbalance your hips, you have to lean really far forward past your shoulders. I'm not really warmed up, so I'm not going to do one now. But you can look through my videos, I've done it before. So this is the idea of all you really have to think about is leaning forward. It's just that it's going to put a lot of stress on your elbows, on your shoulders. It's going to take time to build up that strength. So this is one of those moves where you have to understand that it will move slow. And if you're moving fast, it's just going to both, and this is both literally and figuratively, like I said in my previous video. So if you're moving fast, it's just going to set you up for potential injury. So if you can do a basic push-up position, and if you understand basic mechanics of push-ups, even though it's not the same thing, you can start thinking about how to make that more difficult by leaning into a planche. So first thing, typically when I'm doing planche work, I'm not going to do my hands facing forward, because when you're leaning your shoulders forward, it is going to put a lot of pressure on the wrist. So you have 3 basic hand positions you can use. It's up to you. I'll tell you my preference. So fingers forward. It's pretty rough on the wrists. I don't recommend it. Fingers backwards. Some people like to do this. What ends up happening is it takes almost all the pressure away from your wrist, but it puts a lot more pressure on your elbow. So that might be useful if you're doing things like ring training. But I find personally it's a lot more difficult, but I also don't train planche like that. So part of it is that acclimation. So the third one is the finger sideways. That's my preference. It's kind of a cross between both. It's a lot less pressure on the wrist. It's some pressure on the elbow, but nothing crazy. So I think it's a good compromise. So fingers facing sideways. Next we'll talk about shoulder positioning. So it's not the only way to do it, but generally you do want to be so first of all, scapular depression is really important. So when you're in that planche position, you don't want to be pushing up like this. You want to be pushing down with your shoulders. And the other cue that you can think about, which we'll talk later, is the head extension. But pushing down, and then when you fully depress, you can activate both the pecs and the lats, which are huge muscles, very important for maintaining that stability. So that's going to be something. And honestly, and then the other thing is protraction, right? So we want, you don't necessarily have to be super hunchback, because this is thoracic flexion rather than scapular protraction. So if I'm neutral, I push down with my shoulders and then I pull forward. That's going to be my planche position. So I can even work on just holding this. I can make a fist, I can squeeze, I can apply tension and relax, just to understand kind of what that planche position is going to be before I add my own weight into it. So it's something you can do even when you're not training the move, is just to think, okay, what do I need to do with my upper body? What do I need to do to engage these muscle groups? So that's going to be very helpful. And then from there, we'll just go for it. The first exercise is, in the perfect world, it's the only exercise for planche you will ever need. We don't live in a perfect world, so it's unlikely you're going to learn it from this alone, but this kind of carries forth the main idea. So from the push-up position, fingers to the side. Arms are going to have, I like to go a little bit wider than shoulder width. If you go too wide, you're in Maltese territory. If you go too narrow, it's just uncomfortable. So shoulder width, maybe a little bit wider. So what I'm going to do is from the push-up position, and not a lot, just a small movement. Arms straight. I'm going to use my toes, and I'm just leaning my shoulders forward. And now I'm on my toes. And then I come back. So first is just feeling that position, feeling what happens here, what happens here, how much harder it is to hold, and then a basic push-up position. And this is going to be the boring part. You just have to spend time there. And then what you want to start to think about is how heavy are my feet? So as you continue leaning forward, your arms take more of your weight, your feet get lighter. That's the basic sensation that you want to feel to develop the planche, and eventually you continue leaning forward further. Now, the only thing you should really be thinking about as far as the lean, the only thing you should really be thinking about is the shoulders going forward, because that's really the only thing you need. Sometimes people are going to start to lift their butts up in the air. It's because their shoulders didn't go forward enough and they're turning it into a press handstand. The only thought for the planche is to continue traveling forwards. It's just that as you get into your kind of maximum strength, each millimeter is going to be exponentially harder. And that's where you just have to spend time to acclimate to that position. So tuck planche is going to be your first basic position. I like to set the order, and once you have this order of operations, you can understand how to go into the exercise. So fingers facing out, elbows straight, shoulders shoot. And here it's better to be more round. You don't necessarily have to be in the planche depending on a lot of things, but I generally find it's better to cue more of a round position because then there's more of a buffer to prevent collapse. So, shoulder position, round back, feel something already, fingers out to the side. On the knees, leaning forward, so that's step one. You're going to load the shoulders and the elbows, you're going to feel it. Step two is you just keep leaning forward, but as you continue leaning forward, you're going to gradually take weight off your legs until they come off. And there's still an order to that as well. So, fingers, shoulders, lean forward, keep leaning. Now the knees lift. I keep leaning forward, my feet slide, and then my feet lift. And then I can find balance. So the idea is that when I do this, my shoulder position never change. It continue leaning forward. Two biggest mistakes here, and this one is the most important mistake. You never let the shoulders go down. It's not that it is possible to do a planche with retracted shoulders. I've seen it done. I can't do it personally, so I don't teach it like that. I teach it here. If you lean forward and then you lose this, you lost a lot of the tension that's holding the position in place. So it's pretty much a failed rep. Pretty much there's no chance of salvaging it. So the second thing that people have a tendency to do is when they go up off their knees, they push too much off their feet and then do kind of a lifting their butt too high like a press handstand exercise. It's not as bad as long as you're still leaning forward. But the idea for the planche is that there shouldn't be any up and down movement. It should be all forwards. So the only thing you should really be thinking about is you can think of pushing the top of the head forward, you can think of the shoulders leaning forward, is just to keep going forward until the feet get light enough to lift on their own. So I'm never pushing off the feet. I keep thinking about the shoulders and the upper body going forward, and that's what allows the feet to lift. I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but it's important to get this idea down because a lot of people teach the planche in a way that's overly convoluted, and it's actually quite simple. All you need to do is lean your shoulders forward further. If you can't do it, you have to get stronger in that specific range. Now, another thing people have a tendency to do is they'll bend the elbows, they'll turn this, they think, oh, I have to lift my feet. They can't do it with straight arms, so they go like this and they turn into one of these. It's not wrong per se, it's just a different movement. It's not the same thing. So by definition, you want to train the planche with straight arms. Gymnasts are going to be really picky about completely straight arms. Sometimes in circus or calisthenics, you'll see some micro bend in the elbow. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on your own standards and what you want out of the exercise. But once you start getting into bent elbow territory, it's a completely different move. So the whole point of the planche as we're training it is that it is a straight arm movement. So, very important. Shoulder position, elbow straight, hand position, shoulders going forward. Okay, and then just a final note. What if you can't lift your feet up for the tuck planche? It's okay. You can stay on your feet. It doesn't have to be the final product, and the final product's going to change eventually anyway. But the idea in the training is just to acclimate time here. So maybe you're stuck in this position. That's okay, just hold it. keep thinking about leaning forward. Another really good cue for this exercise in general, especially any of the lower kind of foot supported variations, you're doing it right if you feel like you might face plant. That's how you know you're kind of at your edge, you're at your limit. So I can be here, my weight is evenly distributed. I can be here where I have more weight into my arms because of the forward lean, but I still have a considerable amount of weight in my feet. Or I can be literally, there where I feel like I might face plant, and when I feel that sensation, I know that I've taken enough weight off my feet to make it more useful for building the strength to get to the next level. So I'll make some other videos about the more advanced versions of planche, but this is hopefully just to give you some ideas of how to start training for it and some of the cues and thought processes involved in getting better at it. So give it a go, let me know how it goes. One other just kind of tips or suggestions I might give: if you're doing a lot of planche training, all of this is going to get very tight. You're going to get a little bit more kyphotic posture. You'll see that a lot now in gymnasts getting off the rings and they're like this. So just if you do a lot of planche training, do a bit of shoulder extension work, a bit of chest opening, you can do some table work, you can do something like this, just something to counteract the push in this direction so you don't get too strong here and not enough here. I posted recently a very powerful chest stretch as well that you can do with the rings, so you can do that one after your planche training. But otherwise, yeah, give it a go. Let me know how it goes. Let me know what else you'd like to see on this channel. And if you want to learn from me in person, I teach workshops around the world. You can check my website for a list. But otherwise, yeah, let me know what else you'd like to see.